the Caribbean in the fields of television production, public relations, image management, organizational and crisis communication, marketing strategy development, event planning and management, and customer relations training. A multiple award winner herself, she has also adjudicated the Caribbean Broadcasting Union's annual regional awards. And now, our panelists. First up, Mr. Abraham Lester Andall, a management consultant and practitioner, actively engaged in generative leadership practice and scholarship. He attended Henley, the Management College in the UK, as the 1989-1990 Chevron Scholar for Management. His academic and professional credentials include a postgraduate qualification in organization and leadership by Action Research. He has held executive positions in commercial and offshore banking, airport management and manufacturing, and is a two-time former president of the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce. He is joined by TGM's Mr. Jude BERNARD, one of Grenada's foremost management consultants. Over his distinguished career, he has been responsible for pioneering key projects in both the private and public sectors in fields as diverse as banking, human resources, customer satisfaction, tourism, and manufacturing. He is currently the president of the Management Consultant Association of Grenada and the chairman of the Grenada Coalition of Services and the Save Kamahanpa Committee, Inc. Tonight's forum is live on GBN television, as well as online at TGM's Facebook page and on the Zoom streaming platform. This is an interactive forum, and those of you on Facebook will be able to write your questions, while viewers on Zoom will be able to ask questions on camera. Questions will be moderated, and we'll let you know when the question and answer session begins. For details on how to join us on Zoom, please check our Facebook, Instagram feeds with the handle The Grenada Movement, one word, The Grenada Movement. Smooth or hard landing is taking off. Good evening, Beverly. Good evening, gentlemen.
From the 1950s, and it was Grenada's first Prime Minister, Sir Eric McIlgary, who led the first expedition to the site that he believed would be perfect as Grenada's gateway to the world. Fast forward to 1979, when the revolutionary government, led by Maurice Bishop, become a reality. But in an ironic twist, it was actually the United States that helped Grenada to bring that airport to a usable state. The airport was open for business, albeit with unfinished terminal buildings, in October 1984, after the revolutionary government had collapsed. The cost was put at $80 million at the time, and the United States is said to have contributed about $19 million to the project. Fast forward again to the 21st century, when the present government has cozied up to China and has thrown all development of the country at the feet of the Chinese for planning and financing. The prized airport has fallen squarely in the picture. And the announcement that the government would be taking a US $184 million loan from the Chinese has been met with cheers by some, trepidation by others, who immediately began to assess analyze, and look into the impact of such a loan on Grenada at this time. With an economy overturned by the COVID-19 pandemic, with projected downturn by the Ministry of Finance, International Monetary Fund, and other organizations ranging from 20 to more than 30%. In this environment, Grenada is staring down the task of repaying nearly 500 million EC dollars plus interest over 10 years. That's more than $50 million per year. And engage you, the audience, to give your views on this matter as well. Comments and questions, as Ashida has outlined, will be taken later on in the program. You will note your questions and your comments as we will allow the speakers to complete their presentations, then take the comments and questions afterwards. We will now hear from Mr. Abraham Lester Andall.
Thank you for having me as a presenter on this panel. I want to give my listeners an indication on the flow of my presentation. First of all, I'll briefly place context to airport as transportation infrastructure, and after that, provide an explanatory development model on the three airports, Trinidad, Piaco, Barbados Adams, and Antigua Barbuda. It is essential to understand the opportunistic element that determine the international status of these facilities. I proceed to then place Maurice Bishop International in context of these success models. Within discussion on Maurice Bishop, I would be touching on psychic ownership, leadership, ongoing managerial challenge, the unanticipated challenges caused by COVID, the position of citizens as stakeholders in light of recent pronouncement. I then conclude the presentation with a general overview of the collaborative enterprise that is Maurice Bishop International Airport. So I begin my discussion with a little about airport as transportation infrastructure. Air transportation infrastructure is a requirement in this modern era to facilitate the rapid transfer of people and goods. Because of the significant investment required to develop and maintain these assets, airport infrastructure are generally owned by state governments, and this is the ownership structure of all Caribbean airports. The explanatory development model looks at some models that have emerged from the Second World War, Lend-Lease legacy between colonial Britain and the United States of America. Relates to Trinidad, Piaco, which has since emerged as a business airport, and this is understood within the realities of a state-owned international carrier, what they call BUI, and world-class petrochemical business. Grantley Adams has emerged within that country economic realities. Barbados was initially a hub for the Windward Island travel and subsequently developed as a major international tourism destination. Barbuda Airport Antigua similarly emerged within Antigua economic realities, originally a hub for Leeward Island bound air traffic and subsequently developed from that country positioning as a port and travel center for offshore and international tourism. Now, Maurice Bishop International Airport, in context of this, it's the only airport that bears the distinction at its time of being the first in the British Caribbean to be built entirely from scratch. Those that it preceded, referred to earlier, were legacy structures of the Second World War. MBI in context represent an unfinished economic infrastructure with high social capital value. And I want to talk a little about the psychic ownership. The circumstances of how this airport came into being represent independence and pride of a country and nostalgic memories to an older generation. And that relates to how the airport in its time manifested the most significant economic, social, and political accomplishment of the people. To this emerging generation, the airport remains an opportunity into the future. In short, the airport is economically and socially significant. There are discussions in the public domain regarding let us look at the leadership. I must remind my audience that the government is responsible for the airport, as defined in the Airport Authority Act. There is a responsible minister appointed, and that minister is responsible for appointing the chairman who heads the Airport Authority. While the CEO is mentioned, there is no specific duties assigned to that role within the Airport Authority Act. Now, the ongoing managerial challenges relate to the airport as a high reliability facility, and therefore maintenance and asset replacement are recurrent elements of the running expenses. Facility maintenance can be problematic when there is a downturn in traffic, as what we are seeing now. And COVID-19 is led. What are the unanticipated challenges of COVID? COVID has created unanticipated challenge and negative effect for airport business. The downturn is experienced throughout our economy, and we are aware that the hardest hit sector is that facilitated by air travel, namely hotel, tourism, and the St. George's University. A decline in global travel adversely affects airport revenues, and that is given. You have to look at the position of citizens as stakeholders in light of recent pronouncements. Airports are generally considered as systems, engines of economic growth, and are typically developed within policy modules that gives impetus to economic activities. Airport and hotels are complementary activities. The coming of standards we have seen has been a significant game changer to Morris Bishop International Airport. In fact, that element has significantly improved the cash flow of the facility. However, pragmatically, engines are not expected to run in perpetuity. For years, the hotel sector has been beneficiary of an indirect subvention referred to as LIF support. And these beneficial effects accrue throughout the economy. Now, if you understand tourism, you would see the linkage with hotels, guest house, transportation, entertainment, agriculture, fisheries, and any downturn in travel is likely to affect these economic sectors and activities very adversely. Now, the minister has put some general context to the purpose that the loan would be applied to. The challenge, as we see it, is timing. This is COVID season. And what can likely to go wrong are legitimate concerns. Therefore, there is some need for clarity, since both lender and borrower are likely to apply contingencies in the event that things do not go according to plan. It is important not to be surprised if what has been planned do not happen, and there is the prospect that funds have to be found to pay the installments of the loan. In the Caribbean, I always refer to Singapore as a success story, and as a model to learn from. This is a country about the size of Grenada, and has been transformed using available sea and marine assets. In particular, it is determined that Singapore's aviation transformation has much to do with government's ability to develop a coherent strategy backed by investment and governance. Now, MBIA represents a collaborative effort that has combined high-cost local capital, and local capital meaning both financial and social. And this has been combined with external resources. Financial and social contributions came from Cuba. Material contributions came from Venezuela. Financial assistance came from Iraq, Libya, and a loan guarantee is provided by the British and Finnish government. I think Beverly has made the point that the airport was finished with substantial assistance from the government of the United States. Now, citizens of this island state are beneficial stakeholders and should be provided with all necessary information relative to an option exercise on their behalf. And I think this represents an opportunity what my presentation is and the discussions and questions that would be accommodated in this context. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Andall. You have certainly raised some pointed points in that presentation that you have made, and we will certainly delve further into those when we get into the open discussion. Right now, we will move to our next panelist, Mr. Jude BERNARD. But I must let the audience know, our audience on GBN, that we will be taking a break from the GBN broadcast for about 4 minutes or so that GBN can take care of their commitments to their clients. But we will continue online and GBN will rejoin us after they have finished with their evening lotto presentation. So right now, without further ado, we go over to Jude to hear his presentation on the MBI.
Thank you very much, Beverly, and good evening to our entire audience, both local and in the diaspora. In my short discourse, I will try to find answers for the questions about justification of the airport project and see if there is any rationale for such a major investment at this time in the context of the global pandemic. Permit me, however, to begin with a word of scripture. And it actually comes from the life and teaching of Christ. As he said in the book of Luke 14, 28 to 30. And Christ said, "For which of you intending to build a tower," and I didn't put that in. Those of you who want to check the Bible, it is there. For those, which of you intending to build a tower goes not or does not sit down first and count the cost, whether all who see it begin to mock him, saying, "This man began to build and was not able to finish." Now, mockery is not fun. No one likes to be mocked. But I'll say to you that mockery is not half as bad as your lender laughing all the way to the bank when you default. And if you note, Christ, the Son of God himself, he made no mention of God's grace in the quest to complete that tower. But he said instead, you are urged to sit down, applying good that project. As we said before, it's a major project. The cost is huge. The context, the current context is very challenging. Now, when we speak about cost, it is not just the 177 million EC dollars. Correct you, Beverly, she said US, but it's 177 EC dollars, million EC dollars. It is not just that cost, but it is the opportunity cost. We have to ask ourselves, if we are not spending $177 million, or we're spending only a part of it, what else can be done with the rest of that money? What are we leaving undone in order to do this massive project? Is there something in health we could do with some of that money at this time? Is there something in agriculture or in agro-processing? So cost is not just cost, but it is also what we call opportunity cost. What you are giving up in order to undertake that venture. And I think this is very important in terms of this massive project in the context of what we're going through today. Now, I ask the question, why? What is the rationale for this project? Is it the result of some research that was done that indicated that we needed such a project? Is it a briefing report from some regulatory body that said, if you do not do these things, you may be downgraded and we may not be able to allow you to operate much longer? Or is it a part of a long-term strategic plan? The COVIDious times, as some choose to describe it. How do you compare the conditions today with what existed at the time when that plan was laid down? Or my fourth possible rationale could be that there may be some new business modeling. Lester spoke about a hub, a hotel may be a hub for passenger travel, it may be a hub for cargo, or for whatever. What is driving this massive investment? That's a question that I think we need to have answered among the others that were mentioned before, that we as stakeholders need to have answers to. Now, in an attempt to answer these questions, I did a comparison of three airport projects. Two of them have already started, not far from us. And I compare and contrast it with what is being attempted here at MBIA. The first of those projects is the Grantley Adams International Airport Expansion Project. Fortunately, it started before COVID. It started on the 20th of January this year. Then there is a major project in Tobago, the H.J. Robinson International Airport. This one started in February. We broke ground for ours a few weeks ago. Now, I just want to share some of the comparisons and contrasts. In terms of utilization, Barbados has, in 2019, they welcomed 700,000 stayover visitors through the airports. Grenada welcomed 163,000 in the same period. Barbados 4.5 times. Our airport in Grenada, based on the last financial records that we're able to look at, we record about 2 landings per hour during the workday on average. In the case of Barbados, it's about 8 to 10 landings per hour. So we're looking at an airport which is basically about a quarter in terms of activity to another one. Now, in terms of the protocols for those 3 projects, and I chose to look at, for instance, the clear definition of the components of the project, the justification given for the project, the tendering process, the source of financing, the likely ability to service the debt, and the capacity, local capacity, to monitor and to oversight the project of that magnitude. First of all, in terms of the definition of the project, in Barbados it's very clear. There's a runway, there is additional parking, there is new parking, and there is a repair to aprons. In the case of Tobago, which is one of the other airports, very clear. Again, the terminal going to cost $870,000, and land will be purchased for $530,000. You add this up, total of the project. In the case of Grenada, we hear conflicting information of what the components are. We are yet to have a breakdown of what every one of those costs. We do not know if we can afford to leave one out, how much we'll save. Which ones can we afford to leave out if we are pressed, or if we have to look at opportunity costs in a rational way?
Get high making money moves with the NLA's new Aces High Scratch game with 4 chances to win. Beat the dealer's card to win the prize shown. Reveal an A symbol. And just like that, you are automatically a winner. Scratch away to win the top prize of $10,000. Win easy with Scratch. Must be 18 or older to play.
Good evening, viewers and listeners. It's time for the National Lottery Authority's daily Pick 3 evening draw for today, Tuesday, the 17th of November, 2020. I'm Lexanne Fletcher, and I'll be a draw hostess for this evening. And joining me is Ms. Joseanne Clark. She's representing PKF Accountants and Business Advisors. Now, Ms. Clark is here to ensure the games for this evening are conducted in a fair and accountable manner. Now, the game balls have not been tampered with and are within industry standards. With the Pick 3 game, don't forget you can bet as little as $1 on inline, mix, and pair tickets, and from $2 on backup tickets. Let's find out what the winning numbers will be. It pays to play. Good luck. All right, you got to check your tickets right now. First number is, first number up is 7. Second number 7. Third and final is 2. So let's do a quick recap. First number up was 7. The second number, 7. Third and final, 2. If you're a winner, congratulations to you. And do stay tuned. We've got the Playway Draw coming up next. We'll see you then.
Tick, tock, 2. I win.
Feel like a big kid again when you play NLA's new scratch game, Tic-Tac-Toe. It's instant cash on the go. Reveal 3 X's or 3 O's in the same row, column, or diagonally, and win the prizes shown, or as much as $5,000. Win easy with Scratch. Must be 18 or older to play. Tic-Tac-Toe, please.
Give me a tic-tac-toe, please. Tic-tac-toe, please.
Welcome back. It's time for the Playway draw for this evening, Tuesday, the 17th of November, 2020. And of course, joining me once again is Ms. Josephine Clark. She is representing PKF Accountants and Business Advisors. Now, with the Playway game, all you got to do is bet as little as $1 up to $10 or in increments on any number or dream symbol of your choice. And get to win 24 times the amount you bet. That's $24 for every dollar spent. Well, let's find out what the winning Playway number will be for this evening. Value your dreams, win your way with Playway. Good luck. All right, and the winning Playway number for this evening is 20. That's 2020, and the dream symbol is belly. Just to repeat tonight's winning Playway number, 2020. The dream symbol is belly. Congratulations if you're a winner this evening. And don't forget, we've got the cash flow draw coming up right after this. We'll see you then. Welcome back. It's time for the daily cash flow draw for this evening, Tuesday, the 17th of November, 2020. Joining me once again is Ms. Josephine Clark. She's representing PKF Accountants and Business Advisors. Now, with the cash flow game, you can bet as little as $1 on most of the bet types with the exception of backup, in which case you bet $2. It's time to reveal tonight's winning numbers. It's more plays, bigger prizes. Good luck. First number up is 0. Second number 0. Third. Third number 8. And the fourth and final is 5. All right, it's time to recap. Check those tickets one more time. First number up was 0. The second number 0. Third number 8. And the fourth and final was 5. If you're a winner, congratulations to you. And of course, don't forget to get your tickets for tomorrow's games. And do continue to support sports, culture, and nation building. Have a good night.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Jude. A number of things went through my mind as I listened to you. You know, a large loan has certain components of a small loan. And when you're taking a small loan, a personal loan, you like to know that you are in a comfortable position to repay that loan, that your current lifestyle and your standard of living will not be compromised because you have taken on a new loan. So as Jude started out with his scripture to say, you know, you study carefully when you plan to build. If you're going to build, buy a house, buy a car, take on some extra studies at the level of tertiary level where, you know, it can be quite costly. You look at your finances and you ensure that you remain at least at the level where you are currently when you take on the loan. Nobody wants to be in a compromised position where you can't sleep at night because you're worried about how you're going to pay your bills. And then you start to wonder, what did I do in taking on this loan? But we are inviting you at this point, those in the audience, those who are listening, those who are participating, those who are listening and following with us as we go through this evening, looking at this loan that Grenada is taking on. And it's very interesting, you know, that in the budget presentation, the 2020 budget presentation, the Minister of Finance, the then Minister of Finance, Dr. Keith Mitchell, had said that we have to carefully look at our debt portfolio because, and I'm not quoting him here, I'm just ad-libbing what he would have said in that presentation. He said we had to look at our debt portfolio carefully because we do not want to burden the generation of Grenadians to come with these heavy debts that they will have to figure out how they are going to repay. And that was before the pandemic called COVID-19 pulled the legs out from under the tourism industry, which was the mainstay of the country. Now, looking at those words from Dr. Mitchell and this loan that he's at the forefront of leading for the country to take on, is this decision the right decision at the right time for Grenada to be getting involved in? And I will throw out this question to our panel. Mr. Andall, you spoke about the use of the airport and that Sandals was a game changer for Point Salines in really boosting up the traffic flow through Point Salines Maurice Bishop International Airport. What would you say, Mr. Andall, about this airport expansion? Do you think that the Six Senses Resort, which is supposed to come on stream in St. David, and the other resort coming on stream in St. Patrick, do you believe that these two resorts were taken into consideration as possibly being able to boost up traffic?
Facilities are meant to increase traffic to the country. And any increase in traffic directly increases the airport revenue stream in terms of taxes, landing fees, etc. Now, the issue here is the interjection of COVID. And probably this development was well entrained before COVID. The issue still remains, is COVID going to go away soon? And if it doesn't go away soon, and we continue, what are the probabilities really that if there is a significant delay, that the airport would be able to meet its operational requirements, services existing there, and at the same time, having taken on a substantial development opportunity, would it represent a threat in terms of the country's ability to manage the airport? Or would we be seeing, for example, different managerial configuration being considered? And these are things that we have to be upfront. Deep trouble. So these are not what I call flying in the hat kind of situation. These are real challenges and hard questions that needs to be explained in terms of what if things go so, and what, as I put it there, what are our contingencies? So, there is the pre-COVID developmental opportunity, and there is the COVID reality. And within that context, what happens between the servicing of the commitments and the developing of the markets and the rest of the global economy coming back on track? These are some issues that we need to understand, and I don't have the answer for it. It's the policymakers' perspective, and I would be happy to have some kind of understanding.
Yes, because
not surprises.
What I'm hearing from you in a very guarded sense is that we have not seen or heard a marketing plan rolled out for these new resorts. We really don't know, even speaking outside of the context of COVID-19, which has certainly impacted on tourism and what it will look like and what it will be like going forward. But outside of that, we have not heard a marketing plan, a marketing. What is the scope of work proposed? And I want to throw this at Jude. Jude, have you heard of the scope of the work that has been proposed for this loan that we are undertaking?
Heard different versions of it. There are times when we heard about a runway, which we understand is in need of repair. It's a safety issue. There's lighting. We heard of a number of different taxiways. There's a taxiway. There is a roadway we've heard mentioned as well. We heard of loading bridges. As a matter of fact, I've done some research, and I've learned that there are only 3 airports in the region that actually have those loading bridges. One of them is Piarco in Trinidad. One is in St. Martin, Dutch St. Martin, and the other one is in Montego. One is in Martinique. Piarco, St. Martin, and Martinique. No other airports in the Caribbean, anywhere close to us, not even Barbados has those. So, I mean, it begs the question, do we need those things? Are they necessary? Are they safety related? Are they, being demanded of us by regulators? Are we in danger of, being downgraded if we don't have those things? As nice as they may be. So we have not received, as in the case of the Tobago project, we're told exactly the terminal is going to be 870,000. The old terminal going to be 36. Oh, these are millions, sorry, 870 million. The terminal will be 36 million, and the land acquisition is going to be 30 million. We hear a number of things. They are not itemized, so we do not know how much goes where. And even this, in the scope of works, there was a time when we heard of an airport hotel. I haven't heard it in this last iteration of it, but it is up in the air. And I think the powers that be owe it to us to give us more details and give us an itemized breakdown of the different components.
Take to get the government to retract this loan application? Is there a constitutional premise? And Jude may want to respond to that one again.
Well, first of all, we don't want to say that we want the government to retract. We want them to explain to us what they're doing on our behalf. It may very well be that it's very convincing. I have not seen we don't have access to the financial records of the airport for the last 2 or so years. I know they were not doing too badly, and they were able to reduce their long-term debt to some extent, but they still have debt. So it may be that the government, when they choose to disclose more information, they may be able to convince us all that they can handle it. Because the Prime Minister has constantly said it's not the size of the debt, it's your ability to service it. Right. But I would say to you, I doubt that even in their best year, which was 2019, they would have had sufficient income stream to service a loan of that magnitude when it becomes. I'm not talking when you're paying just the interest for the first 5 years or however, I've been told, but when you're actually servicing that loan. And I can say to you at this point in time, from what I've gathered, I think the revenue stream of the airport has been reduced. Some people say by 90%, some said by 80%. We don't know how long that situation will persist. So I am not sure, but they may be able to convince us. We're waiting on them. But I think that the authorities are not coming forward and letting us know what is that great plan and how it would work. Constitution allows that. There are some countries where you have where citizens can take action on matters like these. I'm not certain. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, but the people can speak. They can demand certain things of their leaders. They don't have to wait for elections, and they can demand to be heard, as we've seen happen in recent times. So I'm not sure that we'll have to go to the constitutional license for it, but I believe that if we clamor loud enough for information, it will have to be given to us.
Well, the Constitution does say that we are entitled to our economic freedom, right? So maybe within that context, there could be something in the Constitution which allows the citizens to file a motion to say, look, these kinds of actions are depriving us of our economic freedom and our social benefits that we need to get from our country. So do something about it. Now, I know Dr. Patrick Antoine is out there in the audience somewhere, and I want to throw a question at him, and I also would throw another question at him from the audience, to which I would like him to respond. Now, Dr. Antoine, I know you're there listening, and I would like you to respond to this question. What is your take from a macroeconomic standpoint on Grenada taking on this loan at this time? And what are some of the things to consider? That's the question I'm throwing at you. Now we have an audience question which was aimed at Jude and Mr. Andall, but I'm going to be presumptuous here and I'm going to pass it to you because it's along the same line of this question that I'm asking you. And the question is, do you think that the upgrading of the airport is necessary at this time? If so, what would be the economic benefits of this? So I'd love to hear a response to these two questions, Dr. Antoine.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good night to all your viewers and listeners, and good night to the panel. Let me begin by saying that there is no doubt that these are difficult. Need to take a look at the airport loan in the context of where we were immediately before COVID and where we are now. And I think the first thing I want to say is that before COVID, we already, as I've said before, saw a number of warning signs. Economic growth was slowing. We had some forecasts presented for what would happen in 2020, 2021. But the second point I want to make is that it appears to a lot of us that those forecasts didn't take on board a lot of the liabilities that the government would have to treat with, such as, for instance, the liability with Grenlec, such as, for instance, the issue of the change in ownership and other obligations that fall from the Grenville commercial complex. You know, what about pension reform and the financial implications from those? Those haven't been factored in to the forecast. And when they're factored in, it turns out, obviously, the forecast would not have looked as good. So I'm making the point that before COVID, we were already seeing some danger signs. It is said that unemployment was around 15.9%, still high. Others believe it's a little higher because we have some disguised unemployment, and in fact, there's reason to suggest that that's the case. So all was not well before COVID. And now that we've had COVID, it really called, as many governments are doing all across the world, to really go into a deep mode of reflection, reanalysis, and readjustments. And I want to say that this is where I continue to have a lot of consternation with what I hear, because I don't see the business case for the loan as it is presently configured to cover the operations and the components that Jude would have spoken to. Now, there may be something there that we don't know, but on the face of it, I'm quite troubled by the fact that I don't see the business case. I don't see it for the reason in the context of COVID was already under stress, so that the airport, given where the tourism trends are positioned, given what we see now, even with people's comfort in engaging in travel, the recent attempts really doesn't augur well. True, we're talking about cruise lines, but I think you will see the same pattern once you take returning residents and so on out. Really still apply to the sort of air traffic. So the business case, when you look at it for the airport as an entity able to pay this back, doesn't appear to be obvious to many of us. And therefore it means that we have to consider the fact that this debt may pass to the government. And of course, because of what I've said about where we were before COVID, and the fact is that we're going to have to do a number of new things and different things, I am not seeing the case. But I also want to make the point quickly that before COVID, it is the case that we were complaining, many of us, many of the economic forecasts, that our economy was already too concentrated. And so when I hear the case that this is really to drive tourism, I simply, without taking a position, ask the question, is it not then the case that this is in fact playing into a pattern of more concentration and without the business case to support it? It therefore means that what we're doing is, in fact, as Jude has put it, really not focusing resources in the direction of diversifying economic activity, and that's quite troubling. So I think that's the fourth point. So let me just sum up by saying quickly, I think comfortable as a Grenadian, it should make all of us uncomfortable. I'm saying the risk assessment, it just doesn't appear to have been done well. And I'm not saying that the facility should not, I'm answering the second part, be drawn down on, that no work should be done at the airport has never been the argument. The argument is that if you do the risk assessment and you do the value model, value for money, you then ask the question, what components of this are absolutely critical now? Go with those components and perhaps stage or phase the other components for later. That's an option. But all of this, of course, will play around the fact that the government has to do the work. And I believe the government also needs to speak to the population. Prime Minister Mitchell, in the statement that you would have referred to, is absolutely correct. We did make the statement too that generations of Grenadians would have spent the last 15 to 20 years of their working life paying debt. $177 million on top of COVID-induced debt will simply mean that there are many people who are going to be retiring, having spent the last 10 to 15 years paying debt. And to argue that it's only 1% of the debt that Grenada had at the time, with that time being pre-COVID, which is what comes from the Ministry of Finance, is really a disappointing argument for a serious policymaker to make. So I think that for all of the reasons I hear, this needs a lot more explanation.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Antoine. And I just want to let our viewers and listeners know that right about 2 minutes from now, we will be signing off from GBN, but the discussion will continue on TGM's social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can continue to participate in the discussion there. So I would like just to squeeze in this one last question so we can take this one before we go away from GBN. Lester Andall, I throw this one at you. Why is the Sandals roadway included in the scope of work? Should government seek to end
before Sandals appeared on the scene? Now, and that concerns the security aspect of the airport. it is not expected that right in the forefront of the airport, there should be this kind of passenger traffic, vehicular traffic and everything. This is a security issue. And it is a requirement that the airport has been asked to remedy many moons ago. So it is not something that comes up because Sandals is here, but it became more urgent because of the increased traffic that is being presented on this road. The model for that road has already existed, that cuts at the top of the existing car park, and that needs to be done properly and put in context. I don't know if there is another model that is designed to replace it, but basically, we would not blame Sandals for what you call the Sandals roadway. The Sandals roadway is a problem that the airport should have addressed even before its initial opening.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation there. So it's a matter of security and not a matter that the road belongs to Sandals, because it doesn't. And we certainly know that that road was there way long before Sandals came on the scene. But at this time, we are going to say goodbye to our viewers on GBN, but we are inviting all those who want to continue to tune in and participate in the conversation to join us on Facebook and our other social media platforms where the discussion will continue. So thank you, GBN, and goodbye to our GBN viewers. And we now continue with this program strictly online. So we move to our next question. This question comes from Tessa.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way, Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Now you love Super 6 even more.
With more money to the jackpot galore.
Play more, win more,
have more fun. With more jackpot money, Super 6 is my number one.
With the new and improved Super 6 game.
The jackpot keep growing and growing and growing.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way, Super 6 a bigger jackpot game. Super 6, bigger jackpots, more chances to win.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to tonight's Super 6 draw for today, Tuesday, the 17th of November, 2020. I am Iva Satney. Super 6 is a multi-jurisdictional game owned by Winlot Inc. and is played in the islands of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dominica, Grenada, and St. Lucia. And tonight's jackpot is $220,000. We'll now select the free ticket letter. Good luck. The free ticket letter is K. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back with tonight's winning numbers.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way, Super 6 a bigger jackpot game.
Now you love Super 6 even more. With more money
to the jackpot galore.
Play more,
win more,
have more fun.
with more jackpot money.
Super 6 is my number one.
With the new and improved Super 6 game,
The jackpot keep growing
and growing.
and growing.
More jackpot money, more reasons to play this game. More money for way, Super 6 a bigger jackpot game. Super 6, bigger jackpots, more chances to win.
Now for your winning numbers. Good luck. The first number is 24. The second number number is 5. The third number is 27. The fourth number is 18. The fifth number is 12. And the final number is 25. Once again, tonight's winning numbers are 24, 5, 27, 18, 12, 25. And the free ticket letter is K. Tonight's winning numbers were drawn under the supervision of an auditor from BDO. Please contact your relevant Central Lottery office for further information on the payment of prizes. Thanks for playing with us, and remember, with Super 6 there are bigger jackpots and more chances to win. Join us for our next Super 6 draw on Friday, the 20th of November 2020. Until next time, I am Iva Satney, wishing you a pleasant evening.
You're already ill and have no time or energy to walk every which way to access your healthcare needs. So come to Spice Isle Imaging on the Carenage for a one-spot stop for all your health service needs. See our in-house doctor and get your meds from the pharmacy right on location. Digital X-ray, MRI, CT scans, mammography, ultrasound and laboratory services are also available. So for that moment when life makes demands on you, you can make demands on us. Visit us at Spice Isle Imaging, Carenage, St. George's.
Despite the situation we now face, one thing is for certain. We will get through this together. As much as we are a part of your community, you are a part of who we are. Let's take care of each other during this time, as we always do. And soon, we know that with the dawn of that new day, all of this will be over, and our land will once again be healed. In the meantime, stay safe. Know that we're here for you. Courts, bringing value home.
Hills and Valley Med Care Center, located on Grenville Street, St. George's, has a highly professional team that gives excellent service in massage therapy, physiotherapy, speech therapy, medical consultation, and more. Hills and Valley Med Care Center sells a wide range of medical supplies, offers home visits for patients in Grenada and Carriacou, and opens Monday to Saturday, 10 a.m. through to 7 p.m. Visit or call Hills and Valley Med Care Center today, 435-6904.
Lender must have some recourse, such should the borrower default on payment. Courts does the same thing every March. The number of courts visits a number of homes and take back the things that people took in December after the 3-month grace period is ended. Banks repossess houses and land and cars and everything else. And so every lender must have that recourse. It's left to the borrower to make prudent decisions in terms of what you borrow and how you borrow. We have to not blame whoever. If it turns out that way, we cannot blame the lender. We have to blame those who have brought us that far. And I think that the people of Grenada have to make what assurances you can give us that our asset won't be in peril. But if we just recklessly borrow things that we have no means of paying for, then we'll end up as the folks who end up every March with the collectors coming and taking the things away. And this time it may not be a firm, it may be a country.
Yeah, because a sovereign guaranteed loan kind of works a little bit different, no? It puts the entire country in the lap of the lender, because the premise is the country will go on. It will always be there. So once you guarantee...
But who would own it? That's the other thing. But who would
own it? That is the question, which is always left floating.
That's the reason why, sorry to interrupt, but we need to see what is the default arrangement. What assets are being put up against that loan? I do not think that any government or agency would loan 67 or 69 million US dollars without an arrangement
there has
to recover if there is a default. But we have been told what arrangement that is. And that's a problem.
Okay, we have another comment question here. It says the Chinese model of funding typically comes with a requirement for the bulk of the labor and material. How does an airport expansion of this nature, including the funding model, benefit the rural community? Lester, what say you?
Before I go to your question, I just want to make a comment relative to Jude's presentation. We have seen models, we have learned from the Taiwanese experience in terms of loan default. Mm-hmm. And even though there is a premise that, the asset belongs to the country, it's here, they can't take it. But we have seen situations where they cannot take it, but they can harm you in terms of how they choose to that we cannot close our eyes to. Now, relative to the rural community and how it would benefit them, this is some of the questions, this is some of the concerns that need to be addressed in the context of a business plan in terms of what are the economic benefits that would be expanded within various communities. Is it just labor, where people work what I call non-skilled position? Is it a situation where we develop certain expertise? And I can go back to the initial airport development. A lot of Grenadians develop significant technical expertise in construction, meteorology, and the like, heavy equipment operation. Now, it's not only the beneficial financial, because these things disappear as soon as the project closes. What is most important is what are the intellectual and technical development that is needed to sustain these levels of infrastructure. And this can only be addressed by the policymakers in terms of what does this thing mean to us? It's not just the loan for the airport, but what does it mean overall for the country development? I don't know. To be honestly, I don't.
It, but the public was never really fully engaged as such in what was happening behind the scenes until we hear that it's like this loan is a done deal. But as one of our listeners suggested, maybe we need to ask the government to put the loan back on the shelf. And let's talk about this some more in the context of what is happening now in the country, with tourism taking on a brand new face, with manufacturing, with agriculture, with all the pillars on which the economy can stand, with all these pillars really needing to be replanted. Why don't we sit and look at building an economy first before we talk about building an airport? You know, Gary Duncan says St. Vincent has one loading bridge. When we're talking about the airports that have loading bridge, they say St. Vincent has one. And we're rushing on. We taking questions and responding. Tim Byam says money would be better spent on upgrading departure facility for the ferry to our sister isles. Safety first at home, airport can wait. What say you, Jude? Jude, you need to unmute.
I did not mute myself.
Okay, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Right. Yes. Well, safety also includes the airport, because if the runway is in a bad condition, it needs to be resurfaced and made safer. If there are other safety concerns, they need to be addressed at the airport as well. But I do agree with the comment that we cannot put all our eggs into one basket. Air transportation is not the only transportation that's important to us. And the ferries, we see how expensive it is and how inter-island travel has almost died. It has dwindled in the last, decade or so because of the cost of airfares and other things like that, and how cargo travel has also almost diminished. It's only the Vincentians who probably seem to know how to bring their Dashins and the other things, but I mean, in terms of passenger travel through the region, it has suffered a lot. So I agree, yes, but I am not saying that we should not, at the same time, while addressing those, not address the immediate concerns at the airport in terms of safety and security.
Okay. Now we have a question from Austin who says, should we have a constitutional amendment to prohibit any public or sovereign assets being used as collateral for loans? How would you respond to that, Lester?
Now, we have seen the challenges in having constitutional reform. And I kind of amused as to what an impending crisis, which changes your viewpoint as to where and when you need amendments. Now, basically, the model of government we have, it's a government, it's a first at the poll kind of situation, and the party with the majority seats takes governance. It's kind of unique in our case that in two elections, we have ended up basically with a one-party dominance. And this has been the problem in terms of exacting good governance responsibilities from the party in power. I don't know if a constitutional amendment to prevent can really, in fact, prevent. And what we want here is not to go what I call a totalitarian, because once you open the constitution for amendments, all kind of amendments can take place. What you have seen more or less happening is that people are saying don't trust the constitution. They are willing to work with it as it is. No, but this is a unique opportunity, to review our thinking and probably, think of the way that the country's governance is more or less in oversight by the people. Basically, the parliament as it is now does not give us that that comfort.
Kind of flex.
Perspective also.
Right. And that is where I am heading to say that I believe people now more than ever want to see how the Constitution can protect them and protect the interests of the country. And it's a time to really look into the Constitution and see if there are breaches occurring, if they can be corrected with the Constitution as is, or if we really need to get into some constitutional studies and make the necessary amendments to take the country into the next stage of development. Because surely we cannot continue to survive on a 1950s, 1960s constitution, which was written in a totally different time period than we are living in. It says, even with the stadium, the government goes back to China for money to maintain and repair the facility. So it means we continue to live beyond our means. And I think this is something we need to look at for the airport as well, because after the upgrading, there certainly will need to be constant maintenance of the facilities. So where does the maintenance cost come into this loan, and how are we going to repay the loan and maintain the airport if it is not generating the kind of income to cover these costs? Dr. Antoine, are you there? I'd love to hear you on this issue.
Still here. Just a couple of points. We operate in a constitutional democracy, and in a constitutional democracy where you have, the upper and the lower house, the governments typically have the authority. That part is standard. I mean, and that's also for countries that don't, operate a constitutional democracy, but operate other types of democratic systems. I think where the issue is the concern over, for instance, oversight committees. And, I think there's been some attempt more recently with the Fiscal Responsibility Oversight Committee to put some of those things in place. But there's still a number of challenges where that's concerned in terms of the provision of information, and not just the provision, but the generation of accurate information to support that kind of institutional framework that I think is absolutely required. But let me suggest one more thing. I think it's time for us to start talking about a Freedom of Information Act. A Freedom of Information Act is going to allow citizens to be able to compel, as it were, the state agencies to reveal information on certain dealings that have to do with the interests of the people. Business that takes place in the name of the people. A Freedom of Information Act, I think, is what is now required. And again, countries are going through these stages of maturation. I think that is required next. In relation to the matter that was asked earlier about whether the government has announced the way in which they will pay for it, the answer is no. And let's be frank, in this time of COVID, many governments are engaging in expansionary fiscal activity. And part of that is where if you feel that a project can generate economic activity, employment with long-term benefits, then you want to engage in that project because you feel that the benefits are measurable. Here is the thing, though. We don't know what the benefits to this project are. The government probably does. But in terms of employment, I would suggest that it's not a lot of people that are going to be employed in relation to the rural community. I can't say that they're going to be rural-based or urban-based, but the answer is that it's not a lot of employment you're talking about, and that a bulk of the funds are really going to be repatriated. Clearly, China is a country that exports technology and people. Technology first. So they're going to be exporting their technology and exporting exporting the expertise that are technologically driven. So I think that fits the airport in a mold. And I think, again, that's the problem. How do we prevent this from happening in the future? I think what we need to do is to have a master plan. Jude touched on it, but I'm not sure he explained it completely, and colleagues might have missed it. A master plan in which you're talking about what are the developments that are required for a facility like the airport and its economic implications, so you can look at them, you can bring them into that model so that everyone can understand clearly this is the 10-year plan around which we're going to develop this logistics hub, right? And in this plan, of course, you have different phases and different economic activities happening. And because we don't know that, it becomes difficult for us to say very much more on that. So my own view is that, yes, constitutional amendment might be required, not just for this, but for other reasons, more for other reasons. But we now need citizens to become vigilant, and we need more institutions like TGM to take positions and to bring these matters for discussion. And what we need now are avenues through which these discussions can then feed back into government policy before they become fixed. I believe the government has gone too far to turn back on this one. Certainly there are some puttering they can do around the edges, but I think the government is committed. And I believe because we are talking about an extraordinary period, the concerns that we sense in the society, including from myself, are not partisan concerns. They're genuine concerns. And of course, in the fullness of time, we can discuss more of where those concerns come from, such as the fact that before COVID, the government was planning to engage on this unprecedented capital expenditure program in the country because there's a recognition that we have an infrastructure deficit. And this unprecedented expansion would have taken the numbers up to about 5.2% of our GDP. And if you look at it comparatively speaking, between 2015, the number would have been like 2.5%. So this unprecedented expansion in capital expenditure programs, in the CapEx through the PSIP. Now on top of that, you put the airport. We don't know what has been reduced or whether it's on top of what was going. People have a right to be concerned about in a time of COVID because it throws everything out of kilter. My view is that the government may not lose the airport at all. I'm not worried about that part. I am worried about the fact that the debt will transfer and eat up a lot of the space and the progress that they made under the Fiscal Responsibility Act, where people made sacrifices for years, and hence it's going to crowd out the ability to do other things. And at the same time, we're not going to get the reward that the government has not yet told us about, which the government is unable to calibrate that reward that will make us comfortable that this is in fact the best bang for the buck. That's the issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Antoine. And I am going to read through some questions here and ask our panelists just to respond to them and give their closing comments at the same time, because we have very little time, just a few minutes left in this program. So let me read through the questions because they seem to be along a similar vein in most cases. Okay, so here goes. Given the pattern that we have seen of Chinese attempts to seize national assets, what is the geopolitical importance of a Caribbean island unable to pay its debts to China? That's one. Another question. Are you saying that the Chinese could sabotage our country from an economical, political, and social perspective if perchance Grenada defaults on the loan? What is the most likelihood that Grenada could default on the loan payment? The other question. Yes, we have an international airport, but our airport is not used in that capacity. We only have the airport in maximum used in August and December. So is this really necessary at this point? And the final question we will put in here, and the panelists will respond. Has it been considered that governments may have offered Grenada as a transshipment point in the Caribbean for Chinese tourism and movement of products and services into South America? Lester, please go first. Give your brief response and your closing comments at the same time.
Okay, if I should, from all these questions, a threat or opportunity, is it an avenue for developing new business, new lines of air traffic? Or what is it then? And that comes to the point that the government needs to explain, because all it leaves us is with the option of speculating. And you know, at this level, speculating on this kind of investment is not really good. People should know. People are worried about the airport if it happens that the government cannot pay the debt and the airport goes into default. As we said, probably they cannot take the airport, but it means significant things to the psyche of Grenadians. But also, at the same time, I think as one person put it, it may represent an opportunity. We do not know. We need to be communicated to. We need to have discussions and discourse. People need to be put at ease in terms of what they're getting into, if they really want to support it, if they want you to reconsider what you have committed. Now, as Dr. Antoine said, probably we have gone too far to pull back on this one. But in any situation like this where there are loans, probably there is always the notion that you can renegotiate because there are concerns that have since emerged relating to specific issues. And I really don't think that, you know, sometimes it's an open and shut deal, but it may well be based on government arrangement.
Thank you, Lester. Let's hear from Jude quickly and briefly as we seek to wrap up. Jude, your comments on the chain of thought of people and your final comments.
As I said before, we cannot blame the lenders. If we are irresponsible or unwise borrowers, we would endanger our assets. So this is a matter that we have to take up with those who we have entrusted with our a matter of people standing up and having a voice. We have to speak, we have to shout, we have to scream, and we have to let our leaders know that we need to be informed, we need to be a part of those decisions that can impact us for generations to come.
Thank you very much, Jude. Thank you very much, Lester. Thank all the participants who played a part in this discussion this evening on this development loan or this redevelopment or improvement loan. What label you want to put on it, it's up to you, but it's a loan that Grenada is taking that we're all going to have a responsibility to repay. Let the discussion continue. Let your voice be heard, whether through the Grenada movement or some other organization. You have a voice. Speak up. Let it be heard in the furtherance of protection of the island, the country, the state of Grenada. Thank you all, and do have a very good evening.
Thank you, Beverly.
and Valley Med Care Center, located on Grenville Street, St. George's, has a highly professional team that gives excellent service in massage therapy, physiotherapy, speech therapy, medical consultation, and more. Hills and Valley Med Care Center sells a wide range of medical supplies, offers home visits for patients in